So it turns out drivers aren't the only ones who can play musical chairs in Formula One. Hi everyone and welcome to Shaluso, and yes, today we are talking about the watches and the watch sponsorships within Formula One for the 2021 season. At the time of making this video, they are just about to run the Portuguese Grand Prix. So far the season has been pretty predictable in the sense that it's Red Bull and Mercedes on top. But you didn't come here to hear about my predictions for Formula One. You came here to find out what are the current watch sponsorships for Formula One. And let's start with the reigning F1 Constructors Champions, Mercedes, and their sponsor, IWC. IWC have sponsored Mercedes-AMG for quite a long time now. When they first started this partnership out, it was actually the Ingenieur that was featured prominently as the watch of choice or the collection of choice for their racing drivers. However, now it's shifted to the Pilots collection, with the prevailing logic being that because Formula One cars essentially go so fast and they're so high tech and all that, it's pretty much what, a pilot is. They are racing pilots, so to speak. And that has spawned tons of different special editions. Most recently, the IWC Racing Big Pilot Constant Force Tourbillon. Released just a few days before I filmed this new watch is, in my view, actually the epitome of really a nice parallel between racing and Formula One cars and a watch, in the sense that this particular one is all about efficiency, in the same way that these days Formula One cars are the same, all about their power efficiency, getting the most power out of that engine unit, being able to deliver it consistently. All of that feeds into Formula One, and this watch emulates that. And I love that when a sponsorship or a collaboration matches not just in a few styling cues, but also in concept. So with this new release, what they've done is they have a tourbillon to essentially negate the effects of gravity, and then they've also fitted it with a constant force device as well as two barrels. So those two barrels as well as the constant force device all help for an even power delivery to the escapement, which means that in theory it should perform more consistently versus if it was just a single barrel with no constant force device. And as an additional bonus, that constant force device also gives the effect of a deadbeat seconds, which just looks cool when you consider this is still a mechanical watch and not a quartz. And all of this with a 4-day manually wound power reserve shown on what looks like a tachometer gauge. I think it's a great example of what they've been doing for the last few years in terms of bringing this concept of the pilot's watch and integrating it with the concept of being a Formula One racing driver. Next on the list, we have Tag Heuer, who are currently the sponsors of the next up contenders, which are Red Bull Racing. This is another collaboration that's been going on for a few years. Previously, Tag Heuer were linked to Mclaren as well as a host of other racing drivers. Tag Heuer is probably the watch brand that has the most history in Formula One, tracing back to the 60s and 70s, where Formula One driver Joe Siffert was literally selling the watches in the Formula One paddock. Both the Monaco and the Carrera have tons of history, both within Formula One racing as well as other racing disciplines as well. So it makes sense that Tag Heuer has a presence within F1. Interestingly, however, the Monaco and the Carrera aren't the collections that really they highlight this collaboration through. Not even the Link, which was historically linked to Ayrton Senna. Not even that. No, instead what they do is they use the Tag Heuer Formula One. This is one of their more entry-level pieces. At first you would think, why are they not pushing the ones that have the most racing pedigree? However, when you look at the positioning, especially with who they're sponsoring, Red Bull is a mass market product. So it makes sense then that Tag Heuer sells one of their more mass market watches. So in that sense, it does make some sense, but I would like to see, if they combined maybe like the classic design of the Ottavia with the modern cues of Formula One to see what a modern Ottavia would look like. Or even if they use the Carrera for it. We've already seen the evidence of that in things like the Porsche collaboration, where in my view, I think it looks great. So no pun intended, time will only tell what comes out of this collaboration in future and whether Red Bull can take the fight to Mercedes. Next, we have Richard Mille, a company which sponsored two teams, and they are two very racing-inspired teams. That is, of course, Mclaren, which they've been associated with since Mclaren dropped Tag Heuer as their sponsor, and now for 2021, Ferrari. That's right, Ferrari has actually dropped their association with Hublot. No word on really whose choice it was. I'm sure both sides say it was an amicable split. I do lament that they don't have that association anymore, because I feel like that collaboration brought out a lot of really cool watches. It was never too overt, and as far as Ferrari collaboration goes, when you compare it to the ones with Panerai, with Girard, Perregaux, I think that the Hublot sponsorship made more sense and also produced better watches. But bringing it back to Richard Mille is already well known as being sort of the racing car on the wrist. So it makes a lot of sense. And for Richard Mille as a brand, especially considering that they've been so active in sponsoring F1 teams, I think this is a huge victory for Richard Mille more than anything, getting the pinnacle of F1 in terms of prestige, in terms of history, and that is of course Ferrari. So let's see what comes out of this collaboration in future. However, if McLaren is anything to go by, if the collaboration with Kimi Räikkönen is anything to go by, I think it's going to be pretty cool, but pretty run-of-the-mill for Richard Mille standards, which is to say still quite exceptional. And one last note on Richard Mille, they have now dropped their sponsorship for Haas and Alfa Romeo. My guess is they had to shell out a fair bit of money to get onto the Ferrari. New to Formula 1 for this year, we have Girard Perregaux. They have linked up with Aston Martin. So far, they haven't released anything specific. However, their drivers have been seen wearing the Laureato, especially the Laureato chronograph. Makes a lot of sense since it is their more sporty watch. I'm looking forward to what comes out of this collaboration in terms of if they make a particularly themed watch around this association. But I think just in general, the concept of Girard Perregaux and Aston Martin, they do sort of mesh as brands in terms of their positioning within their respective industries. You know, Aston Martin is a company that gets a lot of respect. It's got a lot of history, but it's also changed hands a lot of times. It's also had some sort of slow moments and occasions where it never really got the appreciation that maybe things like Ferrari or things like even Mercedes have gotten. And I can also see that, you know, Girard Perregaux does kind of feel like the kind of watch that maybe an Aston Martin owner might consider buying. I think it makes perfect sense that they have this association. I'd really like to see what it does for elevating Girard Perregaux as a brand, as well as seeing how they incorporate some of that association into their watches. Next, after Girard Perregaux, we have Bell & Ross. The French company has associated itself with Alpine, what was formerly known as Renault. Again, another collaboration that has been going on for quite some time, and that has borne quite a few different variants of Bell & Ross watches. However, right now they're all still in the old black and yellow Renault colors. From 2020 to 2021, Renault changed from being Renault to Alpine in terms of Formula 1. They switched their color scheme from black and yellow to now being blue. So I'd like to see what comes out of this for this year in terms of celebrating that continued association, but not too much to report because not too much has changed in terms of them bringing anything new or any new watches. But definitely makes a lot of sense considering that Alpine is the only French company on the grid for 2021, and of course Bell & Ross being a French company to begin with as well, despite their watches being made in Switzerland. Another sort of nationally sensical collaboration is Bremont with Williams. And it also makes sense sort of thematically as well, because Williams has sort of been struggling at the back of the pack despite having a few good seasons recently. And Bremont is kind of the same. You know, they had some strong years. Now they're sort of, I don't want to say dying down a little bit, but maybe not being as talked about. However, the collaboration between the two makes a lot of sense in terms of the watch they're produced. They have a world timer chronograph, which I think perfectly mirrors what an F1 driver would actually need or want. You know, if there's two things an F1 driver does, is they time their laps and they travel a lot. So a world timer chronograph makes a lot of sense. And I'd really like to see whether this helps Bremont sort of elevate their profile. Definitely because Bremont is always sort of billing itself as, you know, the British watchmaker, the British watch brand. This makes perfect sense because Williams is a historically British racing team. In that sense, it perfectly fits Bremont's marketing. I'd really like to see what this collaboration brings for the brand in future, as well as seeing what other variants on watches they bring out inspired by this collaboration. Now, while F1 may be very nice and glamorous, that doesn't mean it's all super expensive watches either. Casio Edifice are the sponsors of AlphaTauri, which is Red Bull's sister or junior company. And again, another one where it makes a lot of sense when you look at the watches they produce. Casio Edifice watches are extremely technologically advanced. You know, they sync up with your phone. They're not full-on smartwatches though, but they're more like the next stage in sort of quartz or ani-digi watches. So I think, again, it mirrors nicely what I was talking about at the beginning with how, in the sense of the IWC partnership, you know, creating a watch that mirrors the efficiency focus that there is in F1. Well, Casio Edifice would mirror definitely the technology focus of F1. You know, all of the new systems, all of the different buttons and functions on the steering wheel, all of that you can see in the Casio Edifice watches that have been produced out of this collaboration. So definitely another one that makes a lot of sense. And it's actually surprising that there aren't any more companies that sort of follow that route. You know, things like Seiko or even Grand Seiko. I'm surprised Grand Seiko isn't in F1 because while yes, they don't really have any racing pedigree, it'd be interesting to see what their take on a racing chronograph is. Most of their chronographs have been quite bulky. I'd really like to see what a nice, sleek Grand Seiko chronograph would look like. because also in my view the spring drive mirrors perfectly what the hybrid era of F1 is. You know, it's that marriage, best of both worlds, of electrification and combustion, in the same way that spring drive is that marriage between mechanical and quartz. But in any case, let me know what you think of all of these new partnerships. Let me know what you think of the ones that have gone away, the ones that have changed teams. Let me know which watch brands do you think should be more involved in F1. And just for fun, let me know, if you are into F1, what team is your favorite, who's your favorite driver, and why. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. And of course, if you like this video, make sure you like it and share it. If you want to see more pictures and infographics of watches, make sure you follow me on Instagram at Shaluso. And if you want to see more videos of watches, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell as well so you know when the next video comes out. In any case, thanks for watching this video, and we'll catch you on the next one.